Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles, Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast, the podcast for special educational needs and disability. Each week on the podcast, we talk about a different topic within the world of SEND to improve our knowledge, to provide support to professionals working in schools and to empower parents. In this episode, we discuss the digital world with the positives, negatives and all the dilemmas that come with it. And with the TV series Adolescence out on Netflix, which Helen had watched before we recorded, I hadn't. I watched it that night. It's a really important time to have these conversations. And as I mentioned, I discussed this with Helen Bray. And Helen is the Director of SEND for the East Midlands Education Trust, or EMIT. And Helen has 20 years of experience in teaching and leadership across early years, primary and secondary, and she is extremely passionate about supporting all pupils to succeed. The Sencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, and we help to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. And we can help schools to do this for a wide range of abilities and ages. We have a range of frameworks to suit students from birth all the way through to 25. We have our early years, we have our engagement steps, and we have our steps for life framework that assesses functional academic skills, employability skills, and all those independent and life skills. For the most complex learners, our engagement steps based on the engagement model can really build a profile of their needs and really show that progress, however small it is. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me, and I can take you through our assessment software and how it can help you. Now, let's get on with the podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing the digital world and everything that comes with it, including a lot of dilemmas. My guest on this week's episode is Helen Bray, the Director of SEND for the East Midlands Education Trust, or EMET. And Helen has 20 years of experience in teaching and leadership across early years, primary and secondary. She is passionate about adaptive teaching, high quality support for students with SEMH, and breaking down silos to provide a holistic approach to supporting students. And she's also been through loads of Ofsteds and is quite tired from it. Welcome to the show, Helen.
Oh, you're making me laugh before we've even started the conversation.
But you said you've been through lots of
thank
Ofsted,
you.
but it was actually enjoyable, but you missed out all the other work. Would that be roughly right?
I think in a nutshell that explains it. Yeah, we've had many back-to-back inspections throughout the autumn and spring term. But it's been a great experience for our schools because they've all realised, even though we tell them all the time, that they're doing a really great job. So it's been great. And thank you for having me. I think the first time I ever met you, Dale, I said to you, this is really weird because you come for a run with me every week. And your face made me laugh, and then you looked down as if to say, I don't go running.
Yeah, my body is telling me I don't really. But no, it's fun
but
when people say things like that to me. It really is quite surreal when people say,
yeah,
listen to you doing this. It's just a bit odd. But now everyone can listen to you doing the same.
exactly. I could listen to myself while I'm on a run, which will be even more alarming.
Yeah, I don't recommend listening to your own podcast stuff. I don't recommend it. Okay. Trying to stay on track for at least a minute. We all love the digital world. Our lives revolve around it, rightly or wrongly. But we're all still finding our way. The digital world really took off when we got the smartphones and we can do all that stuff wherever we were and all those apps that came with it. And as adults, we're still finding our way. They weren't there as our childhood. So we're still learning ourselves, and our children are simply following in our footsteps. But the problem is lots of us are using that technology in a way that impacts us in a negative way.
Absolutely. And we've had this conversation many times in terms of the monkey see, monkey do issue with parents and children. And alarmingly, a lot of our schools have had to ban smartphones on site, not for the children, but for the parents, because so many of our children are coming out of school at the end of the day waving around a lovely picture to show their parents, and their parents have their faces in a mobile phone. And it's actually frightening, the stats on how many notifications our children will receive every single day if they have a smartphone. There was a study done over in California last year, and it stated that kids and teenagers are using social media for up to 5 hours a day, and that's an average. And they're receiving between 250 and 275 notifications every day,
My
which,
when my daughter started in year 7 at secondary, they created these year group wide WhatsApp groups,
mm,
and people were just spamming emojis. And she went to bed, and when she woke up, she had like 700 messages to catch up on. And she was quickly, and it was just emojis, and that was it. So no one's saying anything, but it was just this. Oh, like, I just did not understand it, but nor did she, which was quite good. But it is kind of ridiculous, that level of noise that goes on.
mm,
And it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week noise.
yeah, it never ends. And if our children have fallings out at school or issues socially at school, I don't know about you, but when I was at school, if I fell out with a friend, you went home, you had your tea, you mulled it over, you forgot about it, you realised you were probably overreacting a bit, and then you went back to school the next day and it had never happened.
Well, you both
Our
look at each other
children,
a bit,
yeah,
and then it's fine. Move on.
exactly. Because when we were younger, you had time to go and process these things and reflect on these things and have a chat with somebody, be that your parent or your brother or your sister, and them to then say to you, don't you think you're being a bit silly? Or don't you think this person isn't worth your time? And then you go back the next day and you've built up that little bit more resilience, and you've been able to process what's happened and move on from it. Our children don't have that anymore. They have a small issue at school that then snowballs because everybody in that WhatsApp group that you were just talking about has then made that issue their issue. So that huge rise in online bullying and the massive dents in children's mental health that happens as a result of that, it's staggering.
Yeah, it's huge. And I know that it's so easy. Just put your phone down. Don't look
Mm,
at it. We as adults can't do that. And they know, and I've watched loads of programs where they've said that, and the kids going, but what happens if someone's saying, making it even worse?
mm-hmm,
Or what happens? I need to know what's being said. And often you've got loads of people who have no idea what the story is, are either just poking it to make it more interesting,
mm-hmm.
or adding some other random bit of information about their friend and something else happened. But what I always find is, I think most people are really bad at using emojis. So when we're talking, I can talk like this, or I could talk really sarcastically, and you'd
Mm-hmm.
hear my tone. You'd see how I'm talking, and you'd get that I'm being sarcastic. And then someone types that same thing out without any emojis to hint at it being sarcastic, and now we've got someone believes that person believes that. And it's just, when you're communicating over text, we're all not great at it. It always goes wrong.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, there are some benefits to texting. Sometimes if my son has to say something to me and he, doesn't particularly want to say it face to face because he finds that awkward, he can text that to me. But where in a mother-son trusting relationship where if I feel that the tone is wrong, I can ask him about that. You can't do that in a friendship group when you've got 40 people in that WhatsApp group. It's just that conversation never happens.
No.
And I don't know about you, Dale, but we've got kids of similar ages. I don't use emojis in the same way that they do. If I text my children and I use an emoji, I'll get told that that's horrendous because I've said this. when actually I haven't said that at all. I've said something completely different. So it's almost like a new language has been invented. So when these issues go to schools and professionals are reading these conversations, they actually don't know what's happening in them.
Yep. Yep. No, my daughter is the same. I'll use an emoji. She went, "Why did you use that one?" I went, "Because it's this." She went, "That's not what that means." I'm like, "Yeah, it is. I've been using it for 20 odd years now." She went, "No, it means this." I was like, "No, it does not." Well, it does now. I was like, "Well, why does it mean that now?" What? Yes, there are certain faces or emojis have meanings. And it's like, I
Yeah,
did not know that. And also, I've used that emoji before that definition came around. I've always used that emoji in this way, as has everyone else of my age, when we used to do chat rooms and MSN Messenger and all those sorts of things. We all got it the same way. But yeah, now they all have different meanings.
exactly. I don't know. There was a fantastic drama that came out on Netflix. It was actually last night. I don't know if you've watched it yet, called Adolescence.
No, I'll have a look.
And this was covered in that. And there's a police investigation into a quite brutal murder of a young girl. And they'd gone into the Instagram messenger chats that led up to this murder, and they couldn't see any motive for this young girl being targeted because she was actually being really nice to people. And what had actually happened was that the messages that the adult police officers of our age were interpreting as nice and supportive in terms of her responses to this young man's photos were actually the opposite. And it led the investigation down a completely different path because they'd not actually consulted people of their age to interpret these messages. They had no idea what was happening.
Now, there is a word that begins with C that everyone of our generation hates. I don't have to say the word, but generally it's one of the worst words. Everyone hates that word. Apparently, if you add a Y on it, it's a good thing now.
Oh, that's new to me.
So my daughter's saying it. I don't say a word. She was like, "But why?" I went, "It's not nice." She went, "Everyone's using it." It's like, it basically now means it's great. You're great if you're that. I'm going, wow. So yeah, whatever the current slang is, it's changing every year. And they'll take something which was a nice thing, I mean a horrible thing, something which was horrible, now means a nice thing. I can't keep up. I have to ask my daughter what things mean. I don't have to ask her to teach me how to do what the modern version of a video recorder is. I'm not that level yet. I just can't understand communication these days.
Exactly. And that's part of the issue when we're looking at our children and their completely unfiltered access to social media and streaming, things like YouTube, because even if a parent is on the periphery in the same room and milling around doing bits around the house, they might not actually be picking up on the content that the children are watching and the damage that could be done because they don't understand the meaning of some of the words, some of these very new phrases that people are using on these videos.
And
It's actually frightening.
it also means the people trying to do the filtering and blocking probably don't understand it
Yeah,
either.
no.
So yeah. But we know that obviously when we were young there wasn't these things. We might have had a Game Boy or some other random Tetris little thing type thing, and that was it. And you'd pass one thing around about 30 people, and you wait for your turn. Whereas now every child seems to have a smartphone, and for whatever reason, and there are so many reasons why a younger child may have a smartphone. My daughters had them a bit earlier than I probably would have liked, but at the time I was travelling lots. And I always found that, it's dad, go talk to, and hand them the children with a phone. They wouldn't talk to me. It was the wrong time. They didn't want to talk to me. It wasn't great. But what we found is they would sometimes message me. So I think they started off with iPads, and they could use iMessage on there, but they would message me. We'd have lovely conversations, but when it was suitable for them, which meant although I was away, I could be there for them, and they could talk to me and moan and tell me all the things Mum said no to and that sort of thing, and try and get me to change Mum's mind, which never worked. But it also meant I was there. So for various reasons, technology can really help. But we really limited on what they did. So there's loads of apps we banned them from having. And also, we didn't use it as a babysitting device. So when we went to a restaurant, those devices were not there. And I think that's something that you see a lot of. We see, because we think about where do kids get the device from? It's an adult. And often you're out with a friend, you want to continue that conversation, you've got your children with them. If you give them that device, you can get at least another hour's worth of conversation with your friend. And I remember when my kids were young, we'd see lots of people doing that. But we generally had fun. We generally talked to our kids, we engaged with them, we spent time, and we had lots of fun. But others, you could see it was the adults were talking and the children were just on those devices. And they thought it was the best thing ever.
Yeah, you do. And I see this increasingly, where we'll be out for a meal, and I always take a larger handbag when we go out for a meal because everyone's device goes in the handbag. And when you've got when you've got older teenagers that need to get back to their respective others, that can be tricky.
Yep.
But that's our rule. If we're having family time, the phones go away. And glancing over to see that you've then got a whole family where the kids are being babysat by an iPad, but also the adults are on their phones and there's no talking happening on that table is alarming.
Very.
Actually alarming. And the link then between the cognitive ability of very, very young children that have excessive screen time and what our schools are now facing in terms of early years development is really tangible.
And I think COVID really kind of accelerated it and made it almost like a real big change. It was coming, it was always going to come, but I think COVID really, because parents were working, children were at home, screen time. But when we have that screen, it becomes a very one-way communication. It is, here is information being presented to you. You cannot ask questions. You cannot have an opinion. You cannot have a preference. You can't, if you've misunderstood, tough. There is no scope for that child to engage in something and they want. They can't, they're not asking questions. They're not checking. They're not having to wait their turn to speak and know when do I speak. They're not having to, well, what happens if they, there's loads of little social things around having conversations just don't happen. Whereas if all those at a table in a restaurant, the adults and the children were all not on their phones, they're having to wait and they might be talked over, but then how does mum and dad deal with it? And all those sorts of things. They learn what's fair. All these little things come from those family conversations. But they're happening less and less.
They are, and it's those really, really early communication opportunities as well that are missed. You've got significantly less eye contact for babies now because parents are feeding their babies with their phones in their hands rather than feeding their babies and looking at their babies and having that meaningful eye contact with their children. And our early years schools across the East Midlands Education Trust, all of our early years settings now are doing a lot of training on intensive interaction strategies, because what they're seeing is that they're getting children coming in at 2, 3, 4 years old that actually can't have a very short interaction, not just with a grown-up but with each other. They just can't do it. And On the flip side of that, their ability to control a device is exceptional. So
Yep.
they're excelling in terms of their technology abilities, but in terms of their communication abilities, they are not ready for school.
No.
They're just not ready.
And it's interesting you started off talking about banning mobile phones in schools and you meant for the parents. Is I do see parents pushing pushchairs on their phone or with earbuds in. I've seen
Yep.
parents walk into school on a phone call, earbuds in, with the kids just walking in silence next to them. And I remember when my kids were young, and they always said, you've got to talk lots at home, you've got to expose your child to lots of language. And with your first one, you think you talk loads because you are sitting there feeding, going, should we have another spoonful? And how should we have another spoonful? And mummy will be home soon. And you just make up random stuff to talk about. And you think you talk loads. And then when you get your second child, because you're talking to your first child lots, it's loads more conversation, which you don't realise. So your second one starts trying to join in because everyone else is talking. They want to join in. So they just like going, ah! And all those random noises my daughter used to make because she wanted to do what we were doing, which was having a conversation. As you said, feeding, iPhone, walking
Yeah.
down the road, instead of pointing things out and
Phone.
having a conversation about what you can see, or bus, car, just simple words, colours, anything like that, flower. No, I'm on my phone now. Yep, we're just getting the
Exactly
child from
that.
A to B. That's all that's happening.
And also, we've got an enormous rise as well of families where you've got one or both sometimes of the parents working at home. And whilst that is wonderful because you're maximizing the time that you're actually in the same building as your children, there's sometimes very, very blurred lines between when I'm at work and when I'm not at work. And conversation and sharing meals and all of those things, it's just rapidly decreasing. And we're also of an age as well where you very, very rarely get a family where both parents don't work.
Yep.
Everybody is at work. So I remember, but both of my parents worked, but my mum worked nights. So I remember I always had an available adult with me all the time. We were always talking, riding bikes, playing board games, listening to Billy Joel and, doing all of those amazing things, sat we used to wait for the ice cream man because he was very, he was great. He was very punctual, our ice cream man, where we grew up. And we used to sit there and wait for him. And we knew that when a particular song came on my dad's record player, that was when Paul the ice cream man was going to turn up the street. We'd already counted out our pennies and we were anticipating that. We were waiting for that. Our kids don't have to anticipate and wait for anything now. They don't have to be patient because it is all at the touch of a button and the flick of a screen.
And
There's no waiting.
there is a whole thing about no waiting, no patience,
Yeah.
not being told you don't have that. Because one of the signs in my daughter's school of being extremely poor and probably not far off being abused, according to the children, is not having Spotify Premium. If you do not have Spotify Premium, your
Yeah.
parents just simply hate you and you should probably call Childline or something, is kind of how it's talked about. And so my daughters have had unlimited music since secondary
Yeah.
school. And I like it because my daughter listens to the most eclectic mix of music and I absolutely love it from the 1930s onwards. And she
You're
would
so
never have
lucky.
found that music. And I love it. She gets in the car. Oh, what should we put on? She puts Roy Orbison on. It's like, okay. Or she'll put on Wendy Lee, which is like full on 50s music. And it's great. I love it. But at the same time, I think our generation, and I think all the generation before us, had that phrase of we had to make do.
Hmm.
And that phrase does not exist anymore in terms of no one has to make do. You have everything.
Exactly. And the skills that we actually developed and the qualities that we developed by having to make do and not having everything at our fingertips, everything with that instant gratification are invaluable. And we expect children to develop those skills, but without having those experiences.
Yep.
So there's a real disconnect there in terms of we're expecting children to develop the skills that we have to navigate life, navigate daily challenges, and be resilient, but we're not actually exposing them to any of those challenges or low level stress.
No.
And that's where we're then getting a rise in children that cannot emotionally regulate, a rise in children that might actually be sometimes a little bit aggressive, because they're not getting things happening the way that they want when they want it.
And it's the pace. I'm sure every adult has a child where they go, I'm going to sit my child down and I'm going to watch my childhood favourite movie with my children, and they will love it too. And you sit down in front of Goonies, A Never Ending Story, or whatever it is, Labyrinth, and within 5 minutes they're going, oh, this is so boring. And it is. If you watch it compared to a current modern life, they are very slow. But the characters develop and there's lots going on, but you've got to take time and you've got to be at that pace and be accepting and pay attention, which we can because we grew up with it. We can go at that pace. But actually, for the children now, nothing is that slow. And everything is, I always find that everything is spoon-fed. Everything is spoon-fed for them. And it's loads of little things which are all improvements. So if you went to a theme park now, you'd probably have the app to tell you which waiting times are the longest and go to where they were the shortest. Yeah, that didn't happen. You just had to queue and that was that. And if you found out the queue was short over there, you went, oh well, and moved on. And it's great that we can do all this stuff with tech, but it's lowering our patience threshold. It's lowering our tolerances. We're never having to, we're making life extremely easy. And then when it's not easy, we don't have the skills.
Exactly. My son's currently revising for his year 10 mocks, and he's a very diligent student. He works very, very hard. But the whole concept of revision, we've had to start from scratch. And he cannot fathom how there isn't just a resource to be able to just do the revision for him. Because in all of his studies, there are these fantastic apps and resources that just present the information that you need and then help you to apply that, the sort of I do, we do, you do model. Yep. But for revision, there isn't that. And we're almost expected, once you get to year 10, to automatically be able to independently study. And lo and behold, a lot of year 10 students can't just wave that magic wand and be able to do that. So we've almost had to go right back to basics. And I've had to teach him how I used to study and how I used to revise. And he's absolutely flabbergasted that I had my own table in our local library, that I knew the librarian, that she knew how I took my tea, that I had to pay to photocopy things out of a paper encyclopedia and then highlight them. Like, why would anybody do that? That's an enormous waste of your time, but that's what we used to do. And my other half, there weren't even computers when my other half was at university. He had to handwrite everything. And if he wanted to use a computer, he had to go to the depths of the library in the basement to access a computer so that he could type something. And our children actually think that he's a dinosaur. It's just all so readily available to them. And we're getting so many children get to that point, especially when they have to actually do something independently, that because there isn't the technology there to spoon feed it to them, that they actually have to rely on their own recall and their own critical thinking skills and their own reasoning. They just can't do it because they just haven't developed those skills in the way that we did.
My daughter's secondary school is now teaching students how to revise. We were just expected to revise, and loads of stuff we did was look through your notes type thing. We did that. We had the notes. But I'm noticing with my daughter, my oldest is at uni now, and she went to a sixth form college, and it was very different. It was very much, you were independent. Here's a lesson. Here's the PowerPoint. But basically, it's up to you to learn it and record it in a way that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And then at uni, it's the same. And I think students are so used to being spoon-fed that somehow they get to that point, they get to university. So if they go to a sixth form, which continues that, they get to university where everything is independent learning. Yes, there's a lecture, but you've got to make your own notes. You've got to do everything. And they are not ready. And people are going, so when do I get the, and I see people in the chat on social media going, so when do I get this? And you're like, no, you've had everything. You've had the lecture. You've got the notes. Yeah, but where's all the other stuff? It's like, you have to do your own. And they are not prepared. And I have a friend who's an accountant, and we love gamifying things. So my daughter's school, they're called edge points, and you get points for this, and you get points for that, and you get rewards and all these sorts of things. And one of the rewards, you get to jump the lunch queue or something. But you get all these little things to just motivate. He now has adults who are struggling to stay motivated for more than a couple of months without getting something like that. They need to be told they're on the right track, they're doing well. They need that gratification from an external source. So they can't, an annual appraisal, that's miles too long. They need like every couple of weeks, you're doing really well, here's another accounting point or whatever it is, and they'll keep going. And that gamification, which is coming from all these apps and all these little things, to the danger of it spreading into the real world and adults is really quite scary. That at school you get a certificate for doing everything. In sports day, you're last, you get a certificate. If you do this, you get a certificate.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a certificate. You get to your job, you kick back, you do nothing. Why is everyone getting promoted and I'm being pulled on capability? Why is that happening? You're not putting the work in. And yeah, it's creating an interesting kind of culture in how we look at things and our expectations. And I also think the other thing that the digital world changes is self-reflection. I know that we don't get a lot of that till later in life, but I do think that when you go home, and as you said, when you have that falling out and you're sitting there at your dinner table being grumpy and your mum asks you why and you tell her what that horrible friend did, and she goes, well, did you do that? And you look at it and going, perhaps I have taken it harshly, or perhaps I did do something, perhaps I shouldn't have done that, and perhaps I did shove him first. And then you go away and you think about it and you kind of go through it in your head, and you kind of next day you're like, yeah, it's fine. But that reflection part, because you're never given that time to think, isn't happening.
No, it's all so immediate all the time. And for a lot of our children and young people as well, they don't actually see the gravity that some of the comments that they're actually putting on these chats and social media platforms actually have, because it's not really real. And the social implications there are huge.
Yep.
And our schools are under such enormous pressures to then deal with this during learning time, when they have no power over what happens in 10B's WhatsApp group. They have no power over that at all. They can't force parents to remove their children from WhatsApp. They can't police that at all. But it's them coming back into schools and having such an enormous detrimental impact on education and mental health of young people.
My daughter's secondary, they basically, well, if they find out, this was quite early on, I don't know how they do it now, but basically, if you were in a group WhatsApp message thing, you'd get detention. So they literally said, if you're in it, because basically my daughter ended up being in a group, something happened, and everyone in the group got called up and asked what happened. And they just had these real problems that made two girls fall out. It was all in this WhatsApp group, and everyone, you look at it, and my daughter realised, and not initially, but we banned her from being in any group chats at all. And basically you can have one with your friends. So if you know everyone in the group, that's fine. But as soon as it's kind of leaving your friend group, you leave. And her friends kept adding her, and she would just leave. And
Yeah.
And initially, she was sad that she wasn't allowed, but after a while, she basically realised there was nothing going on, which was great. And so, from our point of view, we also have it that she only chats to people she knows in the real world. Never have your child's name in their email address. That's a really important thing. So email addresses are used in lots of games. Make up something which doesn't have their name in. Really important, because immediately someone go, "Hi, Beth." And you go, "Oh, do they know me because they've used my name?"
Yeah.
There's loads of little things, but we just basically use emails without her name. We banned her from talking to anyone online unless she knew them in the real world. And we would just monitor those things for a few times, and she learned to follow those rules. And she's quite a diligent girl and quite a honest girl. That's what she did. So we overall haven't had huge amounts of issues around kind of messaging kind of taking us down. That was things like TikTok and other stuff, which was the hard part. But we do have to be involved in our children's lives, but not overbearing.
No. And do you know what? I'm really proud that we've got a culture in our family where if I asked for one of our boys' phones, they would give it me. And I don't always know their passcode, but if I asked for it, they would give it me. So I know that there's a level of trust there. They know I'm not going to snoop in their phones and look at what, conversations they're having with their friends, unless I needed to keep somebody safe. That's our rule. And also within messaging platforms like WhatsApp, my other half is so much better at this than I am. He's delved into the settings and he's changed our children's settings so that only people that are selected as people that we know and trust and close friends can add our children into a group. So, for example, if my youngest son's best friend, Jake, added him to a group with 3 other children on their football team, that's fine. The group will form. However, if somebody from a different school that knew Jake, that Jake had given my son's number to, that couldn't happen. You can't add him into a group. So being aware of those settings and those things that you can do to safeguard children as a parent and as a teacher, that gives you a lot more power. And there are some fantastic resources out there for parents and schools to dip into. You've got all the CEOP resources are fantastic. And there's a great charity called Positive Social who offer workshops for children and young people. They also offer workshops for teachers and for parents as well on actually positively embracing social media and messaging platforms, but it not taking over your life and it actually becoming a negative impact on your life. And I think in conversations that we've had before, Dale, we've actually said, do you know what? The digital age is not an evil beast. It's not. There are so many wonderful, wonderful resources and avenues for our children, especially some of our neurodiverse children that can only really be themselves when they're gaming.
Yep.
That is wonderful. And I would never want to take that away from anybody. We just have to be really aware that there has to be a balance, and that striking that balance can actually save a lot of our children from some of the debilitating effects that too much screen time and becoming addicted to screen time and being addicted to that dopamine hit that social media likes can get you can have.
I can go off so many tangents right now. I'm going to go to the one. I'm literally going, "Oh, you said the word dopamine." No, I'm going to stay off that one for a little bit. But we both seem to have that phone is my child's. There's that level of trust that if I ask for it, I will have a look and I will go through. But at the same time, I trust you, and you also have your own privacy. And that's, to me, there are apps out there which you can install, and basically you can then read all your children's messages and all these sorts of things. I consciously, I could not do that. I have real
No.
problems with that. Is my child needs to make their own social mistakes. They need to say something they shouldn't and learn how to deal with it. Hopefully with some support after it's happened, not in isolation.
Yeah.
With the world the way it is, my children need to be able to search for stuff to find out what's being said and then to work out, actually, is that something I need to talk to my parents about? If you monitor and lock everything down, those thoughts will still happen in their head, but you will never know about it. So, but which means so there is a whole element of you need to give them some freedom. But on that rule, like you said, I need your phone, give me the passcode, I'm logging. Not because you're nosy, you want to control, but actually for safety reasons. And both of my daughters at different times have come to me with safety concerns for their friends. And it's been really good. And but I think that comes with those lots of conversations. That comes with you giving them some trust and showing them trust. And when they don't do it, you then kind of help them learn. But you give them that trust again and they respond in the correct way and you teach them to earn things. And you have those great conversations. But the problem is, while we are as adults stuck in our phones, while we're as adults getting our own dopamine hit, we're also not regulated. Yeah, we know regulation, dysregulation. We know all that. Our phones make us dysregulated. We're looking for that dopamine hit. And everyone knows it. Every social media app, every person on there knows controversy gets views, gets reactions.
Yeah.
And that's what they go for. And we want it and we like it. And you get people will pick a fight on a local community group. They know they will put something about somebody taking flowers at the park will cause a fight which will last 4 hours with 100 people. We know this. And sometimes I just put the popcorn emoji on where I'm just going to sit there and watch it grow. And I can lose a whole afternoon watching 3 people argue over flowers, which may or may not have actually happened. But my daughter comes in and I'm not there to respond to her. And that's the thing. The phones not only take up our times, they make us unavailable, not just in terms of, can I put my phone down, but I'm not really present in the room or what you're really talking to me about.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It steals our time, but it also steals our connection to the people that we actually should be focusing on. And you're right. If our children walk into a room and they see us on social media, constantly seeking that dopamine hit and getting lost in scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, they are going to copy that.
They are.
Because children, no matter how old they are, my eldest is 15, he will still copy what I do because he looks up to me and he respects me. And we have a wonderful relationship. However, it's a really, really risky game to play if we are constantly showing our children that being lost in a device and not having a face-to-face conversation or sharing a meal is actually the way to be a grown-up. Because they'll constantly seek that.
And it's also, and it's really hard when you're going, oh, but I use my phone for my work. I use my phone for business. I use LinkedIn. I use Instagram. I use Twitter, whatever it is, as part of my job. So I'm just. Yeah, whatever you're doing on your phone, your children don't know. You might be ordering them a bed on your IKEA website. Yeah. You might be ordering dinner on Deliveroo. You might be doing looking up that positive social and learning, but that's not what they see. And unless you share with them what you are doing, and also, I remember my kids were young. I'd get home from work, and my wife would moan that I'd often be on the phone when I got home, and I need to be there for my kids. So I put my phone down for 2 hours. As soon as the kids went to bed, I got my phone out and ignored my wife. I moved the problem to the next hour and the next person. And it was actually, I need to just have less time on my phone. But it's really hard with short-form video, but it's really hard.
It is. It is really hard, and I've made a really conscious effort. I've moved my work emails off my phone. So I have a work iPad that will ding and it will alert me, so I can be in the house and know, even if it's 10 o'clock at night, that I've had a work email. But they're no longer coming through to my phone, because I found that even on a recent trip away, we went on a lovely city break over half term after a million Ofsted inspections. And even on a city break, whilst I was in a castle having a tour, I felt like I needed to check my phone because it kept buzzing and I knew that I was getting something through from work. So I physically removed that, and I sat there reflecting at one point on that little breakaway, thinking, actually, I know why I reach for my phone when it buzzes. And it's not because of something on social media. It's not because a YouTube video that I've posted has got a like. It's not because of anything like that. I wouldn't even know how to post a YouTube video. It's because of something to do with either my job or my family. That's why my phone buzzes. But my children's phones buzz more than mine. Why are theirs buzzing? If it's not something to do with their job, not something to do with their school, this is all to do with whatever social media they're accessing and those group chats and those other platforms. That's why their phone is constantly buzzing, up to 250 times a day. And it's us that have shown them that actually when it buzzes, you've got to have a look. You've got to look. You can't miss out. You can't miss out. And that huge fear of missing out on whatever it is and why ever it's buzzing is having such an impact on the way our children behave in their mental health. It's enormous. And yeah, we mentioned the dopamine hit. We mentioned that. My son is very talented. He makes content, so he makes he'll take a 1980s video game character, and he will then put a different spin on that character, and he will create a completely different sort of genre of animation, but using that character. So he's a very talented young man. So he has a platform where he posts that. And when he's just posted something, the hit that he gets from all of this positive praise that he's getting, it's like a drug, and he can't not look. And we have to put real measures in place to protect him from that. I joke that I'm his taxi driver. I'm all three of their taxi drivers. There's something on every single night in our house. And I moan about that element of it, but I actually love it because I know that for at least 2 hours a night, my kids aren't on their phones because they're doing something physical. They're doing something where they're not connected to them.
There's a couple of things just to unpick there. So the first of all is that positive, that dopamine. We're looking for something positive. Yeah, so he's put something up and people are liking it. They're responding. My daughters are the same. One of the dangers is that might be for some children their only positive things that they do get that day. And we've got to really think about, for us as adults, if we put something, if someone likes it, bit great. But actually, I'm then going to put my phone down and go do something else and love life and do stuff and great. But for others, that is their only positiveness. That is, and they are searching for it. And they also means they then know how to get it, so then start doing things to get that positiveness, which is a whole rabbit hole we won't go down.
It makes them very vulnerable.
Yes.
Very, very vulnerable. Which, again, the new Netflix show that I mentioned at the beginning of the chat, Dale, called Adolescence, kind of looks into the ramifications of that.
That's it. We just that people pleasing and getting attention and doing more. It's very dangerous. But we've got to make sure we're having those positive conversations. And another thing which I've always found is be interested in your child, whatever they're doing. Just like you talked about the animation and what he's doing. The fact you can tell me exactly what he's doing shows me you are interested and you can talk to him about it and he talks to you about it, and that is a conversation there. Whereas if your child's into Minecraft or Terraria, whatever it is, and you're just going, oh, it's just Minecraft. yeah, you're basically saying you're not interested in your child, and
Yeah.
that will have a negative. So whatever it is they're doing, you need to be interested, whether you like it or not. Be interested. Have those conversations in the real world. And one thing to reflect on, so you had a lovely city break. Yeah. Yeah.
We
Don't
did.
have to say what the best parts were, but think of the best parts. Yeah. Think of them in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now think back to the last school summer holiday, that nice 6-week break.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think of your best bits of that.
Got it.
Yeah. Think of what your kids' best bits would be for that 6 week. I already know that how many of them involved a phone was 0.
Absolutely 0.
Absolutely 0. And as adults, phones have come into our lives, and we talked about that perspective of how we deal with things and making do. And we can now look back, and you can sat there and look at that phone and went, actually, that's ruining it. Because you've had that perspective of what was life before. But I think children don't have that perspective, and we've got to help them see. So I would ask my children at the end of the summer holidays, what's your best part? End of Easter, what was your best bit? What was the best bit? What was this? What was it?
Yeah.
And I'd point out that none of it was ever on their phone. None of it. Apart from maybe looking at some
Absolutely.
funny photos. But when we're looking at the funny photos, we're reminiscing of another time that happened in the real world. And it just I think helps them see that it passes time. Not great. Meh. That's all it does. Yeah, you can sink 5 hours into social media. What do you get out at the end? Meh. 5
A
hours and lost.
headache.
And that's
Yeah.
it. You could have gone for a walk. You could have made... And my daughter does less TikToking now and more baking. She's actually got bored of it because she knows it's not helping, and she'd rather bake. But I think that comes from, with all of this, all the evils of technology, which are actually amazing, but we have to use it responsibly. We have to show our children we're using it responsibly. We have to be open to our kids saying, you've been on your phone too much, and going, yeah, you're right, and put your phone down, not argue why. And we need to have all the real world conversations and maybe point out some of those things that you don't get in the digital world. And that has to be us as parents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've not delved into the realms of executive function at all. And you're laughing at me now, but we've not delved into that. But there needs to be an awareness as well that all of those things that we were talking about that we developed as children because we were problem solvers, our children aren't necessarily developing all of those skills. So we have to have that awareness and just make sure that we don't assume that our children are going to have great timekeeping if we don't teach them that and we don't model that, because it doesn't just come naturally.
Also, I thought about executive function. We were talking about how everything's instant and things like that. And it's
Yeah.
one of the things is, if you and me, who don't live anywhere near each other, decided we were going to meet up in the early 90s, we would we'd say, okay, let's meet up. You live miles away. Let's meet up at King's Cross Station at 3 p.m. And we would say, where? Yep. You would get on your train. I would get on my train. I'd get there. And we would meet at 3 p.m.
Yep.
Now, if one of us was late, let's say we're meeting a group of us, we're all going to meet there. If one of us is late, you missed. You're not coming. You can't catch up later because we can't communicate. Yeah? Which meant you were always on time because you would miss out the whole thing. But it also meant you would learn how to get there and all these things. You just seem to have to remember stuff. Whereas now, if you're 5 minutes late, oh, where are you now? Oh, we're here, cool, I'll catch up. So being on time doesn't really matter. If you forget something, you can always just call your mum. I mean, your mum will ferry it down because she just gets... Oh, I will. And it's those sorts of things really mean that actually the requirements on our children and their executive function skills are less and less.
Yes.
You used to have to remember... How many phone numbers do you still remember in your head?
Oh, I'm going to say about 4.
Are they ones from years ago?
They're from the mid-90s, and 3 of them I don't think even exist anymore, but I still remember them.
Sadly, I can actually still remember the number for the Chinese takeaway, but only because it was one digit different from my friends, which is why I can remember it. But you have these phone numbers because you had to. Yeah, you knew when
Yeah.
things were because your head was it. Now I've got a phone which does it all for me. Everything's organised. All my phone numbers are there.
Hmm.
Less having to do stuff. And that, yes, we're doing much more amazing stuff. But actually, those fundamental executive function skills we need to navigate, especially when those things go a bit wrong,
Yeah.
aren't there.
And there's natural things that we could just automatically do with that automaticity. I can't say that word. But with those things that we can just automatically do, even when we're in a little bit of fight and flight, our kids now can't do that because they're so reliant on something doing it for them.
Yep.
So if I had an issue, and the street lights had gone off when I was younger, and my rule was, you've got to be home before the street lights come on, and I couldn't get home, then my automatic response is find a phone box, reverse the charges, call the house phone, have the conversation, or find someone in a uniform and they'll help you to have the conversation. Our kids don't have that automatic response now, so they go into mad panic and they can't multitask because everything is so readily available and so automatic for them.
It is. And it is. And the thing is, we're talking about lots of negative. We talked about from early years all the way through to secondary, this negative impact on our children. And the bit I just really want to focus on is this was never their choice. As you mentioned, monkey see, monkey do, they are copying us. When you're on your phone, well, that's what adults do. When the app is telling them to do this, that's what they do. When you have things like streaks, you know what streaks are?
I do now. I didn't know. I had a very old-fashioned understanding of what the word streak was,
Yep.
and had an embarrassing conversation with one of my children.
Nothing to do with a
because,
football match.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with a football match and mob mentality, is it? But yeah, I do now.
So my daughter used to do BeReal, which was quite I like the idea of the app. It took a photo from your front and rear, so you couldn't make something look like I was in an amazing place. It would go, actually, you're just at home. But you just put a poster up to make it look like you're somewhere amazing. It would kind of be, you had to be real, which was nice. The problem is it had a thing called streaks. So however many days you've done this for, the higher the better. And my sister was on like 370-day streak. So she'd taken this photo 370 days without missing anything. It meant that when she was on a school trip, which wasn't had to take her phone, she'd have to give her phone to her friend to keep the streak going.
Wow.
Because it was a bragging right. And it was like that became, so these apps are telling them, and in reality they're trusting this app to do things, and actually the app's just there to serve you an advert, and the more you do stuff, the more adverts they serve. They're just making money off you. And there's a whole thing around, and this was a really eye-opening thing, is I was at my friend's house watching with his kids, and we were watching some rubbish on TV. It was Hannah Montana, and it looked like absolute rubbish. And I watched it all going, God. But then actually I sat there and went, they're trying to teach the kids a message. And in this one it was about family and more important than friends, and actually make time for family. You don't know how long you've got with. Is that sort of lovely message, but delivered in an American cheesy over-the-top way. But there was this metaphor and message underneath. And I sat there and went, actually, every kids' TV program I had, there was always a message, wasn't there? That's not on social media. That's not on YouTube. That's just kids opening in Kinder eggs. That's just kids doing this. It's kids doing that. It's whatever. There is no happy message underneath. There's no actually showing you this is what you might have done, but actually that's not great, what you should have done. All those lovely messages actually that our children's TV used to be full of, they're not happening either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not teaching them those little social rules.
No.
And I hadn't taken that into account.
No, me neither. And what it is a lot of the time teaching them is that what we would see as parents as somebody's opinion, our children are inundated with videos and clips on social media and YouTube telling them that that opinion, which is sometimes an extremist opinion, is a fact. And they're being completely indoctrinated
Yeah.
by really damaging content, which on the face of it looks happy and shiny and looks like a cartoon, but is actually, in some cases, vilely misogynistic or racist. And our children feel that this is fact.
And that thing is where we grew up in a world where everything was controlled.
Hmm.
I sometimes wonder how much control and truth, but we all generally got fed quite safe,
Mm.
controlled media, whereas now there is no control on these apps. Spotify put a horrible podcast up this week, and due to backlash, it was immediately taken down this week by somebody's surname sounding like Kate.
Hmm.
I won't say the name. So, but people are watching it, and it's being put on these platforms. They think this is truth, this is trusted, this is. Oh, they got lots of likes, so this must be. I don't agree with this,
Mm.
but everyone else is, so I must be. Actually, something needs to change, and I don't know how it can be because it's all international now, rather than it's not controlled by the British Broadcasting Association or the UK government. It's much wider. I don't know if there is control or possible apart from banning it in ages. But the only thing we have got, the only thing we can do, is we can be parents to our children,
Yeah.
and that can be hard sometimes, but it won't be hard for long. Sometimes I'll
Mm.
understand why you've done some of these decisions. And it's about having those
Exactly.
connections with your children so they do understand why you're doing it, and the fact that you want them to keep playing football because it's going to fill up their time rather than them
Mm.
doom scrolling for 2 hours. Do football for 2 hours, do this
Yeah.
for 2 hours. Also, you make different friends, you enjoy stuff, and you're doing stuff which you, when you come home, you can talk about. Whereas if
Mm.
you spent a whole weekend on your phone, what did you do? Nothing.
Yeah. It's about having those difficult conversations and not avoiding them. You know, it is so easy to avoid a difficult conversation with any child. But as a parent, if you notice that your child might be saying things that are actually a little bit too sympathetic towards people like the guy whose surname rhymes with Kate, you have to challenge that and you have to have that conversation. You know, we had a conversation. I think my children massively regretted asking me about the lyrics to a particular Taylor Swift song, and why I loved this song so much because it wasn't my particular style of music. And you know, they had this alarmingly negative perception and opinion of Taylor Swift. And I really wanted to dig down into that as a mum with three boys in the back of the car. I needed to know why they were thinking, you know, that this incredibly talented and influential woman was an issue. And yeah, we had a very in-depth conversation about the meaning of the lyrics to the song the Man, and about how this woman feels that if she were born a man, that she wouldn't be accused of being rude, she'd be accused of being assertive, and that she wouldn't be accused of being bossy, she'd be accused of being in control of herself. And they had no idea that that's where this young woman was coming from because they'd watched a YouTube video together about someone saying that she was an issue and that she needed to be quiet. And that frightened me as a feminist mum of three boys. That frightened me that with the culture that we have in our house and all of the stuff that I drill into my children every day that they get tired of, that even my children could actually have that opinion of somebody because of what someone else had said on the internet.
See, I've got two girls, and their behaviours when I was younger, I look back and going, if someone had done that to my daughter, I would not be happy. So I've literally, I didn't do horrible things. They were okay at the time things. Yeah, so it wasn't horrible, nothing illegal, nothing, but just, I look back now and going, yeah, that's not right. It's like when you watch an old TV comedy show, you're going, yeah, that's not funny anymore. It's that sort of thing. And it just, I've, all through my kids, it's like, I've watched them growing up, looked at the world, looked at their opportunities, looked at the way, and sometimes I go, I don't understand why this happened. We've had some really nice conversations. So, and we've had conversations like what you've had about actually the sexism that goes on and ableisms and things like that, been really interesting. But what I would say is I didn't always know how to have the conversation. I didn't know how to start it. And if you are a parent who doesn't know how to have a difficult conversation with your child, and it might be that you're talking about a Taylor Swift song or something like that, try and put it into context of something they could understand. Yeah, put it into context of them or you or things like that. But don't avoid it because you don't know how to have it. You can start with, we need to discuss something, but I don't know how to do it. And then start the conversation, see what they say. The first one is always really hard. But generally, when you're having this conversation, if your children see that you're coming from that point of care and protection, not overly protected, but actually you're going down a path which isn't great for you and it might lead to things that you'll regret. Can't tell them no. You can tell them I wouldn't. But they will pick up that actually what you're doing is coming from a point of caring. And you need to have those conversations. You need to say you can't have that app. You need to say, actually, everyone else has that app. You're not having it. These are the reasons. You need to be that person. But you also need to lead by example. But it's, with everything going on in the world, all of these things that you see with these children, young people, the devices, all of this, the people who can change that for your children are the parents, not the government, not the app providers, not Apple, no one. The people who can change it are you as parents. And that's the bit you need to be the person going, I'm going to put my phone down. I'm going to show them. I'm going to come off Facebook. I'm going to come off X. I'm not going to go and note. I'm going to make change. And my children are going to do the same as well. And we're going to do things as a family more. And I've done that with my kids. I'm having a great time, and so are my kids. And
Same.
it wasn't always great. Yeah, there were some times when we're on the phone lots, but we do sit there and share videos with each other. There are times when I'll get a phone out and we'll share stuff, or but it's generally in a quiet moment. Yeah, you might see at our table at a restaurant every so often us all on our phones. But 90% of the time, none of us were. But that comes down to us as parents. It's not blaming school, society, or anything else. We have to own up and go, actually, this is our family dynamics. I know a family with 4 kids, they don't have phones until they get to secondary school, and then it's a safety thing. And even then, they have no social media. And they're a lovely family. They don't have weird legs or anything. They're not disowned. They're not outcasts. They live a lovely, normal life and have lots of friends and normal. Yet there's just no tech in their life, or very low level tech, and the parents keep off their phones. And it's a really lovely, well-rounded family. But we can do that.
We can. And I'm by no means sat here saying that we don't have tech in our family. We do. I bought a fabulous VR headset for Christmas. I can't use it. It makes me want to throw up. So I've spent lots of money on this wonderful VR headset to use for well-being that I can't actually use. But the kids love it. and it's fabulous and it's hilarious. And I very regularly get my phone out and video them falling off an imaginary cliff.
Yeah.
And I'm not sat here saying that no tech is the answer. But what we need to do is have, like you've said, those open conversations and set those boundaries. There are certain apps that my 12-year-old child will not have, even if his friends have got them. And I'm honest with him about why. And he might not always like it. He might disagree with me. But that's okay, because I'm his parent. I'm not his best friend.
Yep.
And there has to be that boundary. And there have to be those open conversations around what they do see and things that might confuse them or things that I feel might be harmful on social media. But those open conversations also have to be respectful.
Yes.
And if I walked in and I saw that my child was watching something on YouTube that I didn't want him to watch, I'm not going to scream at him about that. We're going to turn it off, but then we're going to have a conversation around why that's damaging and why I've turned it off. And it's, yes, they are quite often difficult conversations to have, but they're never going to actually learn how to manage content, manage screen time for their own benefit if we don't show them how.
But also asking them, why are you watching that video?
Yeah.
My friend sent it to me. Okay. And explore that. Yeah. And then they start telling you things about their friend, and you can literally going, yeah, that's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go, what do you, and you get, so there's a whole, often it's a rabbit hole you end up going down, but it's something you need to explore. And you sometimes go, and sometimes you'll sit there and go, okay, so when you're doing something, think about other friends, think about me and your mum, whatever, me, and you have we ever done that? No. And if and they know it's wrong, but they just need someone to sometimes point it out, because what they're worried about is if they don't, then they'll be missing out.
Yeah.
There's that fear.
It's taking FOMO to a whole other level.
Yes. And for those who don't know FOMO, it's fear of missing out.
I've got teenagers, so I'm really with the kids. So.
Well, YOLO. That's apparently old now. You can't do that. YOLO's outside 2020 now.
Oh.
Lots of things change. But, yeah, it's about being in your children's lives is a thing. And it's interesting is I've got an iPad in front of me with the bits of notes on, and I think I've had about 60 notifications come in from email, Teams. Some of them are, and I've got another thing which sorts them, which really helps with my anxiety about all those things. Mm-hmm. But it's that thing, and it's quite tempting just to tap on that notification while I'm recording and have a quick read. But that's the thing, that is something I've learned, is that notification can wait. I will deal with it later. And it's interesting, on holiday, that feeling, it can wait. We need to teach our children that as well.
Yeah. Exactly that. Exactly that.
I'm going to wrap it up because we've been going much longer than we should have done, as we often do. I'm sure Louise Selby will say it's another marathon, won't you, Louise? So thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are welcome. It is a topic we've talked about. Probably talked about it for about 2-3 hours now between us before we even started recording and in previous things. But it is, I see it coming up a lot on social media, children, young people, blah, blah, blah. But actually, the finger's never pointed at us adults. And it needs to be pointed at us adults. Because they don't buy the devices themselves or sign up to anything. Well, that's all coming from us. So we're doing it all. We need to take ownership. So you've given me some links. So you've mentioned Positive Social. You've mentioned some stuff. So I got some stuff from UNICEF and so all of those are in the show notes, and along with Helen's LinkedIn and a link to the EMET. Did I say that correct? You told me, and I've already forgotten. Okay. I would have called it EMET, but EMET. So you'll find all those in the show notes, and you'll find those wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Zencast website. If you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics or anything else, please send us a message via one of our social media channels or send an email to hello@thezencast.com. The Zencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, and we help to show the small steps of progress pupils at SEND make. And we can help schools to show progress for a wide range of abilities and ages. And we have a range of frameworks suit from birth all the way through to 25. So we have our early steps and we have our steps for life framework. Huge range. Go have a look at what we do. And it's all about celebrating progress, however that looks like. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software and what we can do for you. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Bye, everyone.